Alright, this is a lesson on Algebra 2, day 23, solving by taking the square root. The objective, students will solve quadratic equations by taking the square root. These are the steps. Isolate the variable. If the variable is squared, take the square root of both sides. Write two equations, solve each equation. Okay, I'll do numbers 1 and 2, just watch right now. Number 1. Okay, number 1, the first thing we want to do is we want to isolate the variable. So we have x squared right here. It's negative 6x squared. Since it's x squared, we know it's a quadratic. There should be two answers because it's to the second power. So the first thing you want to do is we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. 7 to cancel out here, leaving negative 6x squared is equal to negative 24. Next thing I do is divide both sides by negative 6. When I do that, we get x squared is equal to positive 4. Okay. And we have x squared now by itself. This is the point you want to get to. This was step 1. Now step 2, if the variable is squared, take the square root of both sides. When we take the square root of both sides, the square roots cancel out with the square, leaving just x on one side. However, the square root of 4 is both two answers. The square root of any number is two answers. Okay, so it's going to be x is equal to positive 2 and x is equal to negative 2. Okay, that's step 3, write two equations. Step 4, solve each equation. We don't have anything to solve or simplify, so these are your two answers for number 1. Number 2. Okay, pretty easy for number 1. Number 2 is going to be a little bit more difficult. You'll notice why when we get to the answer. First thing you do, isolate the variable. We have m squared. We know it's a quadratic because it's squared, so there should be two answers. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Everyone's just watching right now, right? 4m squared is equal to negative 34. Next thing I'm going to do is divide both sides by 4. When I do that, 4's cancel out, so I'm just left with m squared is equal to negative 34 over 4. Now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. When I take the square root of both sides, watch carefully, m cancels out, and we still have the square root of negative 34 over 4. Okay? We know that m is going to be equal to, well, we could simplify this and we know that we could make the square root sign in the numerator and the square root sign in the denominator. Okay? Square root sign in the numerator is going to be, oh, by the way, there's two answers here. It's supposed to be m is equal to positive and m is equal to a negative, right? Okay, remember taking a square root, we got two answers, positive and negative. Okay, the first one, the only thing I could simplify in my numerator is the negative sign. Whenever we have a negative square root, it's an imaginary number, so it's going to be a positive I square root of 34. I can't really simplify 34 anymore. And then the square root of 4 is 2. Okay? The second one, m is equal to negative square root of, or negative I square root of 34 over 2. Can't do anything else. These are my two answers. Are there any questions on these two problems? I'm sorry? 34. These are all 34s, yeah. Sorry. Okay, so what is what? Number 2, two answers. Positive I rad 34 over 2 and negative I rad 34 over 2. Okay, so the first one's the easier one. The second one's a little harder because you're dealing with imaginary numbers. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, 1's till the 2's. How we do number 1. 2's till the 1's. How we do number 2. Ready, set. Number 3. I'm going to write down number. Yeah, everyone's doing number 2, but I'm doing number 3 on the recording right now.